Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you are having an awesome, relaxing weekend, kind of catching up on your sleep and just relaxing, enjoying some you time because you deserve it. I hope that you had an ultra productive week and are getting geared up to kick some more butt and take some more names in the upcoming week. Today we are going to be talking a little bit more about CTICU and the different ICUs. I received a question on Facebook in regard to what do you do in the CTICU? And so I wanted to try to elaborate upon the responsibilities of a CTICU nurse and common things, devices, drips, patient populations that I see in the CTICU. So if this is something that you're interested in, please feel free to join me. Excuse my mess because you know what? I don't clean very often. And I should say that because I do. I go on like spurts of cleaning and I clean and I'm super, super good about it. And then I'm just like, you know what? I'm tired. I'm either tired or hungry and I'm sorry, but those take precedence over cleaning my house. Also coffee does too. Like coffee. You can see my coffee pot right there. I also have my handy dandy Dunkin' right here because Dunkin' is doing $2 any size coffee from 2 to 6, just in case you were curious and you know you had to get your coffee fixed too. So let's jump into it and get started. So I feel like the best place to start this video at is just talking about the fact that there are so many different ICUs. So if you work somewhere that's a smaller, like community type hospital, you might not be aware of the fact that there are a lot of different ICUs out there. I don't even know of all of the ICUs that exist, and I work in a relatively large facility. So I wanted to start by just listing out some of the facilities that are at my unit, or some of the units that are at my hospital. What did I even say before? I'll have to like watch this and see. Sometimes, like my good friend Michael Scott says, I start a sentence and I just don't know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way. That was a good example of that. But anyways, back to the point. So let's focus here, girl. Back to the point. So I wanted to talk about some of the different ICUs that you might find. I'm not going to go into their responsibilities, but I think what would be really fun is if you work in one of the ICUs that I've listed or a totally different type of ICU, post what kind it is down below. Post what you do in your unit, like the common things that you see, the common drips, common machinery, or devices, I guess I should say, and how long you've worked there. And this way we're able to get a more complete picture of what all the ICUs do, and I think it could be really beneficial. The individual who asked about the CTICU was kind of going in the direction, in my interpretation, of she wasn't really sure, you know, how to learn about what all the different ICUs do because there are just so many of them. And so I would strongly urge anyone in that spot, especially our new grads, especially those who are getting ready to graduate, who know that they want to be in critical care but aren't sure where the right niche is for them, to investigate like a rotation program or to do some shadowing. So rotation programs, the one that my facility has, hires on these new grads and they're able to rotate through on like 4-week stints through each of the ICUs when they find their fit, or you know, if they at least rule out some different ones and that finds them their ICU. They put in a bid and then are there ideally hired on as staff. So that's sort of like a rotation program. That's a really great opportunity to just gain exposure to the different environments because it can become like a little bit of a sense of pride, honestly, in an ICU, to where we're the cardiothoracic ICU. Here's what we do. Here's our specific skill set. It sets us apart from every other ICU because we do things that no other ICU can do. Same with neuro. They maybe think that they can do things that no one else can do. And I'm not ragging on neuro. I personally just, neuro's not for me. And you'll find that a lot with cardiac nurses. Neuro is not for us. But mad props to the neuro ICU nurses. Y'all are awesome. Same with like PD, same with NICU. So it's really important, in my opinion, to know what sets ICUs apart from one another, especially if you're going in for an interview. Like I can't tell you how many times I've heard where people are asked, so you're applying for a job in the cardiac ICU. What made you choose our unit over the medical ICU? What made you choose our unit over the cardiovascular ICU? And you have to, you know, explain to them why you're drawn to that specific area, not just, well, I think I want to work in an ICU because I only want 1 to 2 patients, and I really like when patients are intubated because then they can't talk to me, and I just really want to work in an ICU. They're going to be like, oh, that's cool. Well, there's the door. Bye, Felicia. So just to become knowledgeable, to know what you're talking about, to make an informed decision on this is the ICU I want to work in and here's why. So let me list out the ICUs at our facility that I'm aware of. It's a huge facility. There may be more ICUs that I have no clue exist. I mean, it's a distinct possibility, you guys. But here are the ones that I know about. So we have the neuro ICU, surgical trauma ICU, vascular ICU, medical ICU, cardiac ICU, cardiothoracic ICU. We have the NICU, we have the PICU, and then we have a step-down ICU that essentially is more just like overflow ICU. They're supposed to get like the downgradable patients, like a stable vent or something like that. They normally just get the patients that don't have a bed. And so that could be any type of ICU patient. So that just goes to show you that there are a lot of different niches of ICUs, and each of them have, like I said, a bit different responsibilities. So if you think that you belong in an ICU and you want to learn a little bit more about it, hopefully we'll get some good stuff down below, but do your research. So getting into the cardiothoracic ICU or CTICU, our unit is sometimes also called a cardiac surgical unit or CSU. I think a lot of confusion results from the fact that all the ICUs, especially cardiac ICUs, names are used interchangeably when they're not necessarily synonymous. So CTICU is different from CVICU, which is different from CCU. And I don't know what all of those units do, but I do know what the cardiothoracic ICU does, and so let's talk about that. So the cardiothoracic ICU. Cardiac surgical unit, I feel, gives you a better idea of what our unit specifically does. All of our patients are surgical, were surgical, or will become surgical. So they've had a procedure, they're being worked up for a procedure, or they're planned for a procedure. We get a lot of CABGs or coronary artery bypass grafting, valves. We get heart transplants, we get lung transplants, we get VAD implants, we get aortic root repairs. And I feel like those are the basic things that we see. So there are a lot of different VADs, there are a lot of different devices that we can see in our unit. So you have all of your different brands of VADs. I would strongly urge you to just go separately research VADs if you're interested in learning more about them. I have an entire binder full. Actually, I have it right here. Let me show you. So this is all, oh gosh. This is all of my training information on VADs. Okay, so all of this right here is information on VADs. Like, it's a lot. It is a lot. There are a lot of different VADs out there. There are a lot of different care recommendations on each of the different VADs. So if that's something you're interested in, I'm not going to really be covering it here. So we have VADs, RVADs, LVADs, Centromag. We have balloon pumps. We have Impellas. We have ECMO. We have heart transplants, lung transplants, which I think I already said. We occasionally will get a total artificial heart. We get, I feel like that, I'm sure I'm probably missing something, but I feel like those are the general things that we see. Of course, when you're dealing with anything with the heart, you are dealing with perfusion, and a lot of times when a heart is impaired in some way, perfusion's not fabulous, and so our kidneys take a hit. As a result of that, we see a lot of CRRT in our unit as well. We get fresh VADs, and we also get long-term VADs and bridge to transplant VADs. So a lot of times if we have a bridge to transplant VAD, we'll be dealing with the explant of the VAD with a heart transplant. So we're simultaneously caring for two things. With VADs, you have to be super anticoagulated, so when you're going for a big open heart transplant, bleeding can obviously become a big concern. So that's, some of the stuff that we see. Common drips, pretty much everyone's on a ninotrope. Pretty much everybody comes out on pressors. We see a lot of epi-levo-vaso. Occasionally we'll see neo, but not very often. We see a lot of dobutamine, milrinone. We occasionally will see diuretics like mannitol. We'll occasionally see Lasix. Pretty much everyone's on insulin. We have, of course, our sedatives, our analgesics, and something unique to our unit, we are a transplant unit, so we have all of our transplant meds. With those, you have added monitoring that you have to do. There are certain lab values you have to check just to make sure that your patient is adequately, you know, I don't know, like, how can I even say this? Adequately immunized. We're making up words, and it's okay. Y'all probably understand what I'm saying. Our rejection meds work by lowering our immune system, impairing our own immune system so that it doesn't attack the new organ. That's what I'm trying to say. So if you can come up with a fabulous word for that, feel free. Let me know what it is. Post it below because I'm having real problems right now. But that is pretty much the meds that we see. In terms of like monitoring devices, pretty much everyone's got a Swan, everyone's got a central line, everyone's got an A line. Sometimes we have multiple A lines. Basically, everyone comes out intubated. If they're having a hard time getting them off the vent, and by that I mean like longer than 5 days, they get trached. We also see chest tubes on chest tubes on chest tubes. We have one surgeon who will put in like 2 pleuros, 2 meds, and they'll all be to 1 pleurovac. So it's like chest tubes everywhere. Chest tubes for everyone. So that can be fun. And I feel like that's like pretty much it. One really cool thing is we have a special ET tube in our unit that the surgeons will use for the lung transplants, to where we can actually have 2 separate vents. So sometimes a patient will only get 1 lung as opposed to bilateral lungs, and we want different settings for whatever reason. So we'll have 2 vents for 1 patient. Like, how freaking awesome is that? Another like unique thing that we sometimes see is our patients are not, you know, hemodynamically tolerating surgery. So occasionally they will come out to us with an open chest. By occasionally, I don't mean like once in a blue moon. I mean that this is something that we're kind of used to seeing because we do see it like fairly regularly. So it can be a bit of a unique situation when an open chest patient codes. You essentially have to convert the room into an OR. You have to call in the surgeon, call in the OR team, and they come and they perform the code. And you're there, you're helping them, you're kind of coordinating everything as the primary nurse, and yeah, it's crazy. So responsibilities of a CTICU nurse, you can probably already kind of gather from what I've told you, things that we see, what our responsibilities might be. There are different levels within our unit. I just realized that I forgot like the biggest thing in our unit, ECMO. We are the only unit in the hospital that does ECMO. If you don't know what ECMO is, I'm very sorry, but the most simple way that I can put it is that it's a form of bypass. So you can bypass the lungs or you can bypass the heart and the lungs, and essentially your blood is pumped out, run through an oxygenator, routed back into the patient. That's like the most simplified version. If you are curious about ECMO, go ahead and Google it. That way Google can do you justice, because I don't think I have enough time to like sit here and adequately explain to you what ECMO is, but it's awesome. It's like mind-blowing awesome. So in terms of getting into responsibilities of a CTICU nurse, so we, as I said, have different levels, but essentially you have to be able to recover a patient as they're wheeled out from the OR. So we have our own CVOR that's right across the hall from our unit, and our cabbages, transplants, valve repairs are all rolled out to us, and we get to recover them. The CRNA or the anesthesiologist will give us a report, tell us, you know, how much product they got, what their vitals have been looking like. Any like irregularities during the procedure, they will reverse them right then and there, and then we have to hit the ground running. We do work very closely with a lot of different physicians. Of course, our cardiothoracic surgeons are like #1. We also have PAs and nurse practitioners that are pretty much always in the unit that we can have access to if we need something. And then we also have our pulmonary critical care team. Oh my gosh, they're awesome. They're pretty much always at bedside. They're who we will go to for anything related to the vent. and for our weaning. We try to wean our patients and extubate as soon as possible. Our goal for every surgical patient, it doesn't matter what kind of surgery you have, once your chest is closed, we try to extubate you and get you sitting up in the chair the next morning. So very fast-paced unit. We get ish done in the CTICU. I feel like that should be our motto. CTICU, we get ish done. So other responsibilities. These patients are very sick. Like I said, it's very common for them to come out on epi-levo-vaso. So you have to know how to titrate your drips. You have to be constantly monitoring your patient, their vitals, your actual patient, and then you also have the lab portion of things. So an example, I had a case come out. It was a heart transplant last week during my orientation. It went so freaking cool. And this patient's CVP was marginal. PA pressures were low, and they were pretty much maxed out on 2 of their 3 pressors. What do you think is wrong? Well, to me, it sounded like the patient was dry. So I gave the patient more fluid, started to see things come around. But then we noticed in their labs that the lactic was climbing. So they were on a certain pressor that was causing this side effect, making their lactic increase. If you know the name of this, post it down below. Brownie points for you. This is a good little like critical care brush up. So their lactic was elevated, and so I had to get with pulmonary and be like, hey, we've given them all this fluid, but their lactic is rising. I think maybe we should switch our med to this. And I'm not gonna say what we switched to because it'll give away the answer. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And so as a team, we collaboratively worked to get this patient stabilized post-op and get them extubated, because that's always, like I said, our goal. So it's a very fast pace, and it requires a really high degree of not only autonomy, but critical thinking. We have different order sets and protocols in place that allow us as CTICU nurses to act a bit more autonomously than you would like typically see out on the floor. So with our rapid weaning protocol, all we have to do is like get a verbal yes from our pulmonary guy to, okay, like, our hemodynamics are pretty good. Like, we're only on 1 pressor right now, and it's like, you know, not a huge dose or anything. Is it okay if we start the rapid wean? And they'll be like, yeah, sure. So we can go in and start all of these order sets and basically begin that process just with a verbal yes from the doctor. We also have different surgical order sets to where we can give fluid based on our assessments. So like I said, let's return to that open heart patient. I saw that their CVP was, I think his CVP was more around like 7 or 8, but usually in our order set, it says, oh, if your CVP is less than 12, you can give up to a liter over this many hours. So guess what? I was able to make that call. I didn't have to call up my doctor and be like, well, doc, you see, I think that maybe our patient is dry because here's what I see. And even more importantly, I didn't have to put out a call, wait for a call back, and then go through freaking phone tag all day long to try to get something to help my patient. I just got to hit the ground running. I made my assessment. I critically thought and determined what I thought to be wrong with my patient based upon the data that I was seeing, and I treated. So that's what I love about the CTICU. You get to use your critical thinking in its fullest capacity. You get to work side by side with these advanced providers. You get to work with your mid-levels, and you get to work with the actual residents and attendings at bedside, and it's teamwork. I mean, it's not just where the doctor is telling you this is what we're doing, here's what we're like. They want to know what you have to say. They want to hear your assessments. They want to hear your thoughts. And so that's what I feel sets apart this environment from everywhere else. Naturally, it is a lot of stress that comes along with that because it's a lot of responsibility. It can become very tiring very quickly, and that's why I believe our unit has a pretty high turnover rate, unfortunately. People just get burnt out because, you know, it's a lot, and it can become very emotionally draining as well, because when our patients crash and burn, they crash and burn hard. And especially when you're dealing with organ transplants, it can be really sad, you know, to see, well, this person gets an organ, but this guy that we've had in our unit and all love doesn't get an organ, and there's no rhyme or reason as to why. We have no control. So I think that's one of the reasons. The other reason why is a lot of people are returning for advanced degrees. So pretty much everyone on our unit right now has plans to become a nurse practitioner or some other advanced care provider, whether it's a PA or a CRNA or something. Everyone in our unit, for the most part, wants to go back to school, which is great. I mean, it's awesome, but it just is kind of stinky for the unit. So I feel like that's pretty much it. I feel like I've done as adequately of a job explaining the CTICU as I can. If there's anything that I missed and you guys want to know more about, feel free to leave those comments down below. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you again for joining me. Have an awesome rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you again soon.